That really does look something special. They certainly captured the look and feel of the Lion. Rapido have managed to cram a silky smooth mechanism into this model. A big hello to you, so great to see you and I hope I find you well. I'm Jenny Kirk, welcoming you up here to Weir. And a big thank you to all of you who joined us on the weekend's live stream, live from Rails of Sheffield. We did an epic 7-hour 20 minutes of a live stream, which is just unbelievable. Looking back at the Cupboard Monkey and I don't know how we managed it, but it was great to meet a lot of you at the event, and certainly a lot of you tuned in to see that on the live stream. But today we got something just a little bit different for you. We're going back to the very pioneering days of the railways and that wild west of pioneering spirit of all of the different designs that came out. Steam locomotive technology was progressing at an amazing rate, and a lot of locomotives found themselves obsolete in just a matter of a few years. So a lot were rebuilt and rebuilt again and rebuilt again, and not many things survive from way back then. I suppose the most famous is Rocket, but there is another amazing survivor from that time period, which was quite a venerable veteran of the pioneering days of railways, even in the late 1920s, early 1930s, when it was rediscovered and then given a restoration by the L&MR crew, which took a little bit of a few historical liberties with it, and then it became a very famous locomotive, appearing in a number of different films and TV series, and surviving right through to the present day to actually run again on Britain's railways as part of the Rainhill celebrations in the 1980s, and it still exists in this science museum today. It is of course Lion, made very famous by its Technicolor experience in that Ealing comedy, The Titfield Thunderbolt. And it's interesting that when I've worked down at Ealing Studios, tucked away there is actually a massive board which shows all of the Ealing comedies that were filmed there, and Titfield Thunderbolt is on that board, and it's really amazing to see that when you go down to the studios today, and it's just tucked away round the back, and it really was amazing to actually get there and get a photograph of that. But it is Rapido that have taken on this model, and it's most high profile for the Titfield Thunderbolt set that is still to be released, but they haven't neglected the main range versions and are bringing out both the 1930s and the 1980s rebuilds of this model, with some really quite sublime detail differences between them, and they really reward some close inspection because there are some incredible details that they've managed to include on these, which I'm guessing that 98% of all the people who buy one of these models may never ever be aware of. But we're going to be taking a close look in this video today. Don't forget as well that we've got an affiliate link down below to take you to where you can pick up your own Titfield Thunderbolts or Lion in her 1930s or 1980s guises, with or without sound. And I just want to point out that the sound installation, we will be showing you the Lion sound installation today, and it does differ from the Titfield Thunderbolt sound installation if you've got one of those sets on order. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Come with me in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model double O gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest loco.
Don't forget as well to tickle the like button, share this video and subscribe to the channel, and you can also go on over to Patreon and check out the different tiers of rewards that help you to support the channel and keep us making the videos that you want to see. But come with me today, we're going to be taking a good close look at the Lion from Rapido that they very kindly sent a review sample over so we can get a good close look. It may be a tiny locomotive, but it does pack one hell of a punch. Let's take a look and find out just how. When Rapido announced that they were doing the Titfield Thunderbolt models, it did make sense that these would also be released in their real-world counterparts, and Lion is the latest one of these to reach the shops, following on from the Laureate Y and the Toad AA20 brake van. And this is being offered in two different civilian versions, and the one that they've actually sent over for the review for the channel very kindly is the 1930s condition, catalogue number 913001. Now this is available with and without DCC sound, and there's also a 1980s version, and I'll explain the reasons behind there being these two different versions. Now, the history of the locomotive is quite interesting and quite long and convoluted, and really it only survives by quirk of fate. Now, Lion and its sister locomotive Tiger were built originally by Todd Kitson and Laird in Leeds for the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in 1838, so a real veteran survivor. It was, of course, rebuilt several times over its career, and this is something that can also be seen with the surviving rocket locomotive, which actually doesn't look anything like its replica rocket, which was built for the 150th anniversary, which was built true to the lithograph pictures of how it originally looked, and that gave you quite an idea of how much these locomotives changed in the early pioneering period of railways. Now, very, very quickly, I guess, it would become outclassed. The technology was moving on so quickly, and Lion eventually passed into the hands of the London and North Western Railway, who in turn sold it to the Mersey Docks and Harbour Board in 1859, and it worked there for a bit and then was eventually turned into a steam pumping engine. And this is how it managed to survive. Now, it was kind of known it was there, but it was unearthed and then ultimately donated to the Liverpool Engineering Society after it was rediscovered. And there are photos about of what they pulled out from where it had been used as a steam pumping engine on the internet. It was then rebuilt into this form, which is the iconic version, the one that we know from the Titfield Thunderbolt, and that still exists to this day. It was done at Crew Works in 1928, and that's when it acquired this haystack-style firebox. Now, there aren't any photographs of the locomotive going way back, and it has been rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt, so nobody's really quite sure what it would have originally looked like, but it certainly captured the look of these very early pioneering locomotives in the way that it was rebuilt. And it was steamed in the 1930s and 1950s when the Ealing Film Studios were making Titfield Thunderbolt, and they wanted an oldie-worldy locomotive, and Lion was the obvious choice, being a working example that they could use. Now, it was painted in quite a gaudy livery for that film because it was one of the first Ealing productions that were filmed in Technicolor, and they tended to like to make things look very vibrant in these because it was quite a newfangled thing. So it was specially painted for the film, but this particular livery is what it was originally restored in. Now, if you're wondering about that 1980s version, by the 1980s it was in need of another bit of restoration, and Ruston Diesels took that on, and so it got repainted in a different livery, and there were a few other detail differences. And Rapido have done models of both the original 1930s rebuild and that 1980s Ruston Diesels rebuild, and that's the version which ran on the main line in the 1980s, and there are some pictures and video of it doing that as part of celebrations at Rain Hill, and then subsequently that's what you will see if you go and visit the preserved locomotive. Let's take a look. We've got another good substantial box, and it really does protect the model in transit, also in storage as well. And I've always said this, and some people laugh about the obsession with boxes, but I think a high quality box says high quality product. If it comes in flimsy packaging, it doesn't really instill confidence in the product within, even though that is just a psychological thing. Now, we've got the owner's workshop manual. Read this first. It says, if you don't, lion might bite. Never one for reading instructions. I only flick through this, but we've got a bit of interesting prototype history in here, a little bit more in depth than what I gave you. And it has actually appeared in a number of different films and TV shows. And then we get a warning about the coupling between the locomotive and tender running in DCC operation. We've also got a function list here. And whilst this is the silent model, the good people at Rapido have also loaned, I do have to send this back, I'm not sure, I think there is a supply issue at the moment. Certainly the Titfield Thunderbolt packs are waiting for their sound decoders, but this has to go back, and be interesting to see though what the sound setup sounds like. It does have a factory fitted speaker. It's always interesting to see what that factory-fitted speaker sounds like, and we get some additional black discs here. I'm not entirely sure where these are for, but I'm gonna actually tuck them back in there for safekeeping. So I've got the loco and tender out of the box, and in the box they're not actually connected to each other, and there's a couple of things that strike me immediately out of the box. Firstly is the weight, and the tender itself has got a reasonable weight to it, but the locomotive, for its size, and you can gauge that, I do have quite big hands, but there you are, it sits across my 4 fingers really quite well, but seriously, this is actually heavier than bigger locomotives that I've seen ready to run. So they've really packed a surprising amount of weight into this diminutive locomotive, and they've done this, I guess, through extensive use of die-cast components. I can feel that haystack firebox does feel like metal, the boiler as well, and there's a lot of detail being got into this. Of course, it had wooden cladding, and this has been replicated reasonably well on there. We've got a good colour for the wood. It would have been, I guess, if not varnished, probably would have been varnished, but then it would have got this glaze of oil, and as it got hot it would have darkened the wood down a little bit, and that has been captured really quite nicely. And then we've got the metallic dome cover there. Lots and lots of metalwork went into this. It wasn't a real haystack firebox, but it had this cover on to make it look that way, and I guess on the back, that backhead detail kind of gives away what the real top of the firebox would have looked like. It would have had that kind of an outline. Now, with an open cab, there's no excuse for not having some great detail here, and they have delivered. All the riveting detail. We've got the water gauge, which the back of my mind is telling me that that was a later addition, partly because it was rather unnerving to run a locomotive with no idea how much water was in the boiler, and there's certainly those wacky railway pioneers were certainly quite daring, but That was definitely a must-have in the 1930s rebuild. We've also got the regulator on there, separately applied parts. The firebox door is just relief detail, modelled closed. And we've got plenty of space there for some nice figures, and I'm guessing that Model U are already on the case with some appropriate driver and fireman figures, and I would not be surprised if Rapido have preempted that and you can buy Rapido-based driver and fireman. I wouldn't be surprised if Andy, maybe Jason Schron, got dressed up at some point and got scanned. If they haven't, can I just say, I thought of that first. I want to take full credit for that. But yeah, you definitely need to. That would be a rather fun addition. Of course, you can get scanned by Model U and actually have yourself put onto the locomotive. And you can actually get a Model U figure of me, which I have dubbed the mini-me or the mini-Jenny. And I'm handily shoveling coal, so I could be the firewoman. We've also got the rendition of the inside cylinders there at the front, and some really nice relief detail. That all feels like die-cast. The chassis is die-cast. Now, I have seen some people pointing out there's not really much detail on the underside, and I counter with, well, how often are you looking at the underside? So, you know, if it keeps costs down and allows a greater amount of low-down weight, then I'm all for this much simplified underside of the locomotive. The important parts above are very well detailed. We've got the nameplates on there with the lion, and then these very ornate open splashers that really capture that open Victorian look, the early Victorian look of these pioneering locomotives, and that rather austere front face with the strange smokebox doors. And then we've got this flared chimney top. Again, there's debate as to whether the real Lion ever had this flared chimney top, but certainly that's what the 1930s rebuild got. And I guess they were going for this ye olde worldy look to it. Now, in terms of the hole, as it were, that goes down there, let's get myself a jeweler's screwdriver. And we've got right down to there. So that's a good deal of depth, which basically means when you look down there, there's no sign of the bottom. The other thing I really like about this is we've got this characteristically very open frame at the front, and that is captured really nicely using the die-cast metal to give it strength, and then we've got these peculiar fully enclosed buffers that a lot of these early items had. They are not sprung. I'm not really sure how you could do that. The real ones seem to have like a leather cover over the top, and not sure how you would replicate that. We come with a hook in the center of the front buffer beam. There is no front coupling in any way. I think any mounting point for a front coupling would really spoil the look, so I'm glad they've not even tried. And there's lots of these separate like strengthening gussets, which there's air gaps everywhere. This is not a simplistic casting. This has got a lot of separately applied detail. You can actually see there at the front the splashes through those very fine metal parts. Now, I'm told that the wheels on the real Lion have a different number of spokes between the front and the back. And I think most people wouldn't have realised this if a manufacturer hadn't actually bothered and just used the same wheel castings. But I can actually see there, if you look, they look slightly narrower together, ergo extra spokes, and wider apart on the front, ergo less spokes. And that really is an attention to detail that keeps it in tune with the prototype. And I'm guessing most people didn't even know that. Certainly I didn't until I was told. But that is a very subtle way that Rapido are 100% accurate. Now, the connecting rods, very, very fine. Again, metal, and they're not like a fluted rod. They're kind of a bar with this very quite ornate piece on the end. It's a shame in a way that we've got those screw heads on the ends of the axles, but I guess there's not really any other way you could have realistically attached these. They are finished in the same black, not too obtrusive. And then we've got that firebox protrudes really quite low, which is authentically captured. We've then got these stretcher bars all the way along, and then flared up at the fronts. I do like these stirrup style steps there. And then we've got that drawbar assembly on the back. Now it's an 042. We do appear, I think on the face of it, we've got pickups from all 6 of these wheels. I like this as well. This is, again, it's all metal as far as I can tell. I think. I don't know, it's difficult to tell. If it's difficult to tell, then I guess even if it's plastic, they've done a really good job. I like the way all the separate colours are picked out. It's a really ornate livery, really quite well applied. I really do like these safety valve and pipes on the top. They're another characteristic feature of the prototype, and they've been captured really well. And the very thoughtful use of materials means they're surprisingly robust, even though we've got pretty much a scale thickness, and it captures their lightness really, really well. We've also got the whistle there in between, and all in all, it's a great package there on top of this haystack firebox. The tender, too, is characteristically really quite small. Now, just looking around, just to give us an idea of tender sizes. So I've got this locomotive, and Lion itself is smaller than the tender on this H2 Atlantic. So you can get a sense of just how small this model is. And in here we've got the coal load. It does feel like it might come out, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't want to fiddle too much in case I cause any damage. We've got separately applied handbrake lever there, water filler on the back. There's a lot of relief detail on here, and the lining, it's a little bit more austere than the locomotive, but certainly a nice rendition and fully in keeping with the prototype. We've got those same buffers on the back, but then we also feature, and I like this attention to detail too, we've got 2 different couplings. This one in the centre you might recognise as being one that will be compatible with the Liverpool and Manchester coaches that are already on the market. And I think that this shows great joined up thinking by Rapido, that it kind of acknowledges that there are other manufacturers out there and people might want to use other manufacturers' stock. Now that stock doesn't have conventional couplings, so there's the coupling to allow you to use them with this model. But most people use the slimline tension lock. So we've got the NEM pocket attachment there. Well, at least we've got the triangular tail, which certainly makes it a lot easier to get these couplings attached. You can also see underneath we've got brake detail, and where the speaker is hidden with those holes to let the sound out. And again, there's a lot of metal construction. It's very, very free running. And I'm just looking there. I can see wires. I think that we've also got, yeah, we've got pickups off the tender wheels as well. So actually that should make this a pretty faultless runner. And whilst space really is quite tight, I don't think we're going to have any issues needing a stay alive. Now to connect these together, it's just a case of lining up the 6 pins and then just wiggling them together, and they'll sort of grab and hold. And then we've got this adjustable full plate, which really does a great job of sealing the gap between them. We've got a great deal of movement between the two, but it doesn't look like they're artificially wide apart. And certainly that really does look something special. Overall, they've certainly captured the look and feel of the Lion. When it comes to DCC fitting, it's quite simple. Now I'm going to just detach this from the locomotive just to make it a little bit easier. You just grasp the tender top, squeeze ever so slightly, and it unclips. That's all it is, just unclips. We've got a metal weight in there. And then inside the tender top, you can see the circuit board and we've got the blanking plug there and the next 18 socket. As Rapido have sent over that sound decoder for us to experience the sound, I'm going to fit it with this. If you are not going down the sound route, you just want regular DCC, then we do have a link down below to Tramfabrique, who are the UK stockists for Trainomatic, and they do sell the appropriate next 18 decoder to be able to fit, and you fit it exactly the same way that I fitted this sound decoder in. To refit, just line up one side of those clips and then gently squeeze in the other, and you should get clunk, click every trip. It's just a little bit trickier to get the other side in there. Let's just try it the other way round. Now, it comes off a lot easier than it goes on, is something that I will say. Maybe just push it over just a little bit. That is quite tricky, actually, and unfortunately there's like a ridge either side, and that appears to be the issue there. That's such a shame, because this was really easy access, and there we go. You can feel that click, but it just takes a little bit more work. And we've got our locomotive DCC fitted, so we're going to take it over onto Weir Yard and see how it performs. The locomotive was silky smooth, and there was absolutely no hint of any need for anything like a stay alive. With that all-wheel pickup over both the locomotive and tender, it really did not stutter in the slightest, even with the sound chip running, so that was really quite good. It managed the radius 1 curves and also the twists and turns and the point work without any great issue, although it did struggle pulling anything more than the Laureate Y and the Toad AA20, also from the Rapido stable, when running up the gradients. But the real locomotive would not have been taxed either with a particularly large train, and certainly with the train that this would most commonly be seen running either in preservation or indeed in the Tipfield Thunderbolt, it was able to cope perfectly well, with a little bit in reserve if you wanted to tax it a little bit more. It really is quite a sweet mechanism, and as you'll see on the rolling road, it's absolutely silent. If I lift it up off the rollers, then there's just, you can tell the only sound here really was the rumble of the rollers themselves, and that is a silky smooth mechanism that Rapido have managed to cram into this model. When it comes to the sound installation, well, we've got it on the rolling road here so that we can have the microphone next to it and we can work through all of the different sound functions. What I like about this is Rapido have kept it simple and resisted the urge to put an awful lot of superfluous and really not necessary spot sounds, which can often clog up the higher functions. And it also means that anybody with a simpler DCC system is able to access the full suite of sounds for this locomotive. So let's go ahead and get that on. There are a number of different whistle options available as well, so if you press the whistle key over and over again, you don't get exactly the same sound each time as it cycles through the different sounds available. Let's get them moving. And let's run through some of the other different spot sounds in turn. F7 removes the brake squeal if you don't want that to sound when the locomotive is slowing down. And then there's a little something special on F8, the lion's roar. F2 for the whistles. F3 for coal shoveling. F4 for the safety valve lifting. F5 for water filling. F6 gives you the coupling clanking. That only works when the locomotive is in motion. Likewise, F7 turns off the brake squeal, and again that only works when the locomotive is in motion. F8 gives you the little Easter egg of the lion's roar. And that completes all of the different sound functions. So we turn now to the scores. First up is build quality, and I was pleasantly surprised at just how robust this model is. It's well put together, and it feels like a well put together model. There's a lot of weight, a lot of choices of things like die-cast metal and etched metal parts to really go in to make this an uncompromised rendition of this diminutive prototype. We've got some really interesting use of different materials to make sure that parts are slender but robust, and I really like the attention to detail of some of these gussets that you can see through, the splashers that are see-through with these springs in front, and these really quite slender rods as well. All in all, they've done a great job of this, and there's nothing I can fault, so I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Next up is running quality. And this is an area where the model did struggle just a bit. Despite the massive amount of weight that Rapido have crammed in, the model does suffer a little bit and struggles on the gradients on the torture test track on Weir Yard. It was able to pull the Laureate Y and the AA-20 brake van, which will be included with it in the Titfield Thunderbolt set, but over and above this it really couldn't manage on the more extreme of gradients. On level track it will pull a lot more, but don't expect it to be pulling 11 or 12 Mark I coaches, because the prototype just never could do that. But for what it should be tasked with, it will perform quite amicably. There's absolutely no need for a Stay Alive 2. I like the way that they've got all-wheel pickup over the locomotive and the tender, and with that adhesive weight really helping there wasn't even a stutter over even Insel Frog points, so it really is a great performer. All in all, I'm going to give this a 7.9 out of 10. Next up is DCC fitting and innovation. Well, with the sound decoder install, I have to say, I really quite like the fact that they've kept it simple. We haven't gone for hundreds and hundreds of spot sounds that sometimes it seems that manufacturers are really tempted to add in there. Most of the time, believe me, you'll never use most of those spot sounds, so they've kept it to the bare essentials. It also means that all the functions are low down. F8 is the highest, and so anybody with a very basic DCC system can still get access to all of the functionality of this model. The sounds that are available too are simple but effective. The only sound that felt a little bit gimmicky was the lion's roar. Now, I understand why Rapido have put that in. They do have a great sense of humour as a company, but to be honest, that F8 function is one that you probably only use once or twice and then largely forget about. But that's not really a problem. All of the essential sounds are there, and it's a great sounding installation with that speaker that comes factory fitted, really packing quite a punch with a really good sound reproduction. The area where I struggled a bit was getting the tender top back on, and it felt a little bit difficult to line up those ridges, and I felt I was pushing and risking doing some kind of damage to the tender. And anybody who's less confident than somebody like me might have really struggled with that basic DCC installation. But overall, it's pretty good, and I'm going to give it an 8.8. On accuracy and quality of finish, again, this is another area where Rapido really have shined. We've got all the different versions tooled up, either the 1930s or the 1980s rebuild, and there's also the Titfield Thunderbolt version coming. The attention to detail really is quite incredible, with the different quirks between those different rebuilds being captured across the models. The paint schemes too are complex but well delivered. There's no paint out of place, it's just all there and where it needs to be, and this is actually something that would be very complex to finish and finish right, but Rapido have managed that. I like the thoughtful use of materials to make sure that it is prototypically accurate but durable and robust. All in all, there's nothing I can fault here, and particularly the fact that we've got a different number of spokes between the driving wheels. I think most people would never have noticed that if they'd have just tooled up one set of driving wheels to cover all four, but that's not the Rapido way, and for that it gets a 10 out of 10. When it comes to value for money, well, the prices on these are $179.95 RRP for the DCC Ready and $279.95 for the DCC Sound Fitted. It has to be said that it is an incredibly small locomotive, but it packs a powerful punch in terms of what you get here, and it really feels like a great quality model with the amount of weight and the finish that's on here. But it is pushing the upper envelope for what most people would consider quite a tiny locomotive, and in this day and age that is something that does have to be considered. But all in all, it does still give good value for money, and I'm going to give it an 8.5, and that gives us a highly respectable 45.2. Even a few years ago, if somebody had said that this pioneer of the railway world was going to be tooled up in a ready-to-run model that would be mass available, it would have been hard to believe. But Rapido have managed it, and they've managed it exceptionally well. This is a great locomotive, and I can highly recommend it. Well, I hope you really enjoyed that, and of course, as always, please like, share and subscribe, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below just what you think about this model. Do you have one on order? Have you already received one? What do you think about it, and is there anything that you have spotted that maybe I didn't that you want to leave in the comments down below? And of course, we've got that link down in the description box to help you find one for yourself if you're still on the fence and maybe you've watched today's video and thought, actually I do quite fancy one of those. But do hurry, because they are sure to sell out in short order, and certainly that Titfield Thunderbolt set that's still forthcoming is sure to be something that is going to be very popular too, so do get your orders in for those. But until next time, don't forget to check out the merch store, and this is me, Jenny Kirk, so you take amazing care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video comes in association with L&MR, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model 00 gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest loco.
I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends.